Good start. Well, yes, whatever is happening, there we go. And I thought we were all ready this morning, but it seems that we're having a bit of problem with the sound. So let's try this one. That's a bit better. Good morning, Keith Hayes, Mirador Television, broadcasting from Lewes in the UK and near to the south coast of Britain. From the White Hart Hotel, which is in the center of the town and which has great historic significance, particularly for the United States. It's where Tom Paine developed his Rights of Man, which was the theories that triggered the American Revolution. And indeed, the hotel has a plaque saying that it is the cradle of American independence. So there you are. That's where we are this morning. And you can see from the beams behind me that it is a very ancient hotel, very old Kochi hotel, probably about 15th century. And it still has all the features of that very ancient time. So there you are. Now, shall we take a look at the papers? I think we should, because there is no getting away from the fact that on everybody's lips this morning is what the Chancellor did yesterday. And there are howls of outrage from the middle classes, as one would expect. He's taken away from the semi-rich, relieved some burden from the wealthy, very wealthy, and basically given it to people like me, older people. It's the first time ever. But it also is the worst. Well, let's go with the newspaper, shall we? The Guardian, which says the from bad to worse is what the Guardian has to say about Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's autumn statement. The paper highlights the £30 billion of spending cuts and £25 billion of backdated tax rises, and says the fresh austerity measures have been delayed until after the next election. Well, yes and no, I suppose. But certainly it is the middle classes that are taking the brunt of this particular autumn statement. We had a statement from Liz Truss's loss, which caused outrage a few weeks ago. And now we've got Jeremy Hunt, who, with that wonderful smirk of his, has created another situation that is not to everybody's liking. So be prepared. Get ready to take a hit if you're anything other than an old age pensioner. Oh my goodness me, it's my turn to smoke. I won't smoke for too long. This government, this party, shall we say, has a habit of changing its leaders and its mind very frequently. And it wouldn't surprise me as long before we ever see the light of day and we see the inside of the Bank of England's vaults and that money comes pouring out, that there may not have been another palace revolution and that it all changed and we're all back to square one. But anyway, for the moment, the triple lock stays with the anticipated pension inflation rate for pensions being 10.1%. Oh, dearie, dearie me. Nobody is happy this morning. So let's see what the Daily Mail has to say. It is scathing. First of all, Sarah Vine has got a column in there, and she says, and there was me thinking we'd voted in the Conservatives. She's and the headline is Tories soak the strivers. The biggest ever fall in living standards as recession hits. Taxes soar to the highest since war in 25 billion pound raid. Since the war, I think it's World War II. Yeah, and the middle class plundered to fund welfare and pensions. So there you are, dear, 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 as socialist as you can probably get in this country, anyway. And there's no question that not everybody is happy about it. Not at all, at all, at all. But we have become used to being not happy with our governments. And as some commentators said this morning, is what would Labour do in its place? Probably it would have pitched something similar itself. Financial Times. Hunt paves the way for years of pain. Oh my goodness me! Oh, you're going to hurt. You're going to hurt. You're going to hurt. In its lead, the Financial Times says Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has paved the way for years of pain. Reporting on the fiscal announcements made during the autumn statement, the paper says the UK households are set for the steepest fall in living standards on record and the highest tax burden since World War II. Oh, so not very good music, not very good singing partners there. The Times, years of tax pain ahead. They follow on with the theme. Cuts to public services and an increase in taxes are the focus of most reports in the Chancellor's autumn statement, with the Times suggesting the UK has years ahead of tax paying. However, it points out that Mr. Hunt promised extra funding for education and health in the run-up to the next election. Well, health is certainly something that people always look at. Education, I'm not so sure. We seem to be pouring a lot of money in only to fart around with it and not turn out very bright people. A la this government. I reiterate that bold statement that I make is 650 MPs in the House of Commons, and I wouldn't give you tuppence for any of them. And they certainly can't seem to find anybody who can satisfy the electorate. So there we are, the Metro. You've never had it so bad. And the Metro says reports that families will face a typical £3,000 annual energy bill. Support is reduced from the April statement. It adds the nearly 6 million earners will be dragged into higher tax bands during this passage of play. Oh, we're not at all happy, are we? The Mirror. Carnage. Millions to feel deep pain after Tory hell budget. Dropping living standards is the worst since 1956. 6 million into higher tax bands as we go into recession. And energy bills and jobless rises, recession. House prices fall. Hunt and Sunak hailed the moves. Well, they would. They thought about it, didn't they? And shirk any blame. They say, no, not us, not our fault. Not our fault, yeah. Truss and Kwasi were absent as Boris gave his own payday revealed. I'm not sure what that's about. The dropping living standards is the worst since 1956. And Sunak and his Chancellor were growing in the House of Commons as they plunged millions into economic hell. What was growing? Grinning to the House of Commons. Oh, that's right, yes. The sickly grin, which I simply find very irritating. Doesn't matter what he's doing. The UK's lost decade, biggest drop in living standards on record, with real household disposable incomes set to fall 7% over the next 2 years, sending British earnings back to the 2013. 2013 means. Okay. The Daily Express. Let's just see. The Eye reports on the impact of Jeremy Hunt's announcements on household disposable income, which is set to fall by 7% over the next 2 years. The Office for Budget Responsibility has said the UK is already in a recession, with the UK economic forecast to shrink by 1.4% in the next year. Oh dear, even more. The Daily Express. Victory. The Express campaign secures the 10.1% state pension increase. The Express, being the natural supporter newspaper of the government, often try to look on the bright side, and they're doing their best to look out on the bright side. But here, and what they're saying is that their newspaper got a victory in as much as the triple lock is going to stay for pensioners. So they're finding their way around, trying to look on the back side and turn it to the backside. The Daily Telegraph, the rhetoric of Osborne with the policies of Brown, it says. Oh dear. Let's see. The Telegraph quotes the chief executive of the Resolution Foundation, Torsten Bell, who said Jeremy Hunt delivered an autumn statement that combined the rhetoric of George Osborne and the policies of Gordon Brown. The Chancellor protects pensioners, but clobbers workers, saying, well, let's just say what they're saying is some of this is badly written. I didn't write it. Let me just defend myself against bad writing. Bad reading and pronunciation this morning, yes. But The Sun, 3 new Lions World Cup anthem. It says, football's coming home, ho, ho, home. And it's talking about the fact that the England team going to Qatar have done an anthem, which traditionally football teams do now. But this time it's to do with Christmas, and they're going to send it back to the UK from Qatar to be played over the Christmas period. The Daily Star is, after the gloomiest budget ever, let's look on the bright side. Not at all like it. So let's see what it's got. And it's rather cynical response. Life's rubbery being a gimp. It's calls the autumn statement the gloomiest budget ever. It's not terribly clever with its headline this morning, but it certainly is to the point. Okay, where are we in terms of it's 8:44. We've given you the headlines. Why don't we actually go down to the park for a minute or two and just take a breath? Now I'm just going to turn to local news because it's a bit disturbing, and we have to watch it this morning. Is the fast-flowing East Sussex flooding pours towards Alfriston village after the river burst its banks. So do be careful. It's yesterday. We rather glibly said, "Well, there doesn't seem to be much rain around," but of course it's been storing itself up in the hinterland, and now it is flowing towards Alfriston. Roads are impassable, and whole fields are underwater in and around the small village. A Red Environment Agency flood warning is in place for Alfriston and that area after torrential rains overnight into Thursday, that is Wednesday, Thursday, is filling the nearby Cuckmere River, and so that it's burst its banks, and water is very high and continuing to rise. At least 20 cars were rescued on the A27 after the flooding of that road. Warnings are still out for the county. Watch it, otherwise you may just get sucked into getting yourself into trouble, frankly. The other big news this morning that is national but also local is that the Royal Mail announces big change to deliveries, and it's in dispute, of course, but the Royal Mail says that it's losing money hand over fist, and therefore what it's going to do is to cut out its daily, its Saturday mail delivery. And the mail will not be produced into your mailbox on the weekend. And the other thing is that it's now talking about huge redundancies, and of course that's stirred the unions into action, who are already threatening to go on strike. So the mail is also big news, apart from what the government is doing or hasn't done, or you name it. And so we are in dire straits, chaps. We're in dire straits. Not at all a happy picture, and not at all leaving happy bunnies. Now I'm trying to clear my mouth. A nice cup of coffee made for me by the lovely Jane, who greets me each morning when I come into the White Hart. An absolute gem, a beautiful smile, but also gets stuck in and helps me set up the studio and makes me coffee. And oh my goodness me, I couldn't do without her. So there we are for a really good start to the day. The back pages, the sports, as who the latest manager to decide he would like to be a manager of England. Everybody expecting that the position will become vacant from Gareth Southgate after the Qatar World Cup, which starts this weekend. And it's a lot more about the footballers. And there's a little bit about tomorrow's match between England and the All Blacks. And at one time, you could almost guarantee who was going to win. But as the article rightly says, the All Blacks aren't as formidable as they were. And England, on its day, can produce some sterling rugby. So it should be a good match. That's rugby, and football always gets the headlines, of course. Right, where are we now? Well, we are in dire straits. That's where we are, and I think that I would just like to have a little rant at this stage, because although we are going to blame the government, and rightly so, and the politicians, and rightly so, for the mess that we find ourselves in. One of the things that we should also realize is that in many ways, those 650 people are mere mouthpieces. And that, generally speaking, the people who have to make sure that these things go through and are administered properly is the civil service. And as my old colleague Leo McKinstry said in an article yesterday, is the civil service is fast becoming not fit for purpose. So not only do we have crises, but the people that normally solve these crises are just getting worse and worse in the way that they behave. So we are in dire straits. But I blame us. And I'm not a bit surprised that the middle classes are yelling and screaming at the autumn statement. Oh, look what I see it is. Oh. The fact of the matter is that they have had 10 or 15 years of very, very good life, a bold economy, credit easy to get, an economy that was growing, you name it. We have been not too bad at all, and the middle classes have loved it. Well, now they are being attacked in terms of taxes and the cost of some of the services that they expect from the states, and they don't like it one little bit. No, sir, they do not like it, not one little bit. And I would suggest that we have brought it on ourselves because we stopped working. We were not that competitive prior to COVID and lockdown. Not that competitive at all. There was already distinct signs of lack of application by the government and by industry and by business to grasp the nettle and to say, okay, we're in an unprecedented time with lots of good things to help people spend money, to make money, to do business, you name it. It was not a bad time at all. So we were unprepared for the COVID lockdown menace, which affected the way that many businesses did business. And one of those businesses was work from home. And people gaily took the King's silver, it was the Queen's silver in those days, but took the royal silver and went merrily on their way, only to eventually be told, hang on, somebody's got to pay for what you've enjoyed and what you accept. And guess what? It's going to be you. And that seems to me to make a common sense. But the trouble with Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak is, as the one newspaper pointed out, is they grinned. They were enjoying the discomfort that they were bringing to the middle classes. And that's something that no class, whichever end of the spectrum it is, will accept. And mark my words, the electorate is going to tank this government when it comes to election time, which is what, about only a little over a year to go now. It's going to tank the government because they have been so inept in the way that they've handled so many things, and now it's come down to cost of living. How much tax we pay, what services we get and we don't get. All the things that those people who decided life was very good, thank you very much, find unacceptable. And I don't blame them for finding them unacceptable, because any Tory government is laissez-faire. Let you get on with it. We tinker around the edges. This one has become very liberal in its approach and starts to look after those people from across our borders, from outside our borders. And that has prompted an immigrant crisis. We didn't really do very much about them when the going was good. Now the going is not so good, or in relative terms, anybody who tries to come here will find it better than the thing they've left, the country they've left. But we are now opening up our borders, and so we've got a lot of people to look after, a lot of money to go in that direction, and the middle classes don't like it. But, as we embraced the 4-day week, my goodness me, even though every evidence was telling us it wasn't working, NHS, great big queues developed. Trying to get hold of your bank, if it's left at all, takes hours. The NHS, you're trying to get to see your doctor, who in turn will send you to hospital, is taking an age, and you are not allowed to suggest to it that it's got it wrong. So we are in a bit of a stink, chaps, a bit of a stink. And I don't know any more than anybody else does what we're going to do about it. Not a little bit what we're going to do about it. This is Mirror Television, broadcasting from the southeast of England, the town of Lewes, which is the county town of East Sussex. A town full of history, not least of which is the home for a good decade of Tom Paine, who, while he was here, formulated the rights of man. He believed that there was too much power in the hands of the stinking rich, and too little in the hands of those people at the lower spectrum. In fact, he drove past the Houses of Parliament, with an American friend, some think it was Benjamin Franklin, and was heard to say, now that my vision is that there should be a place there for the common man. In fact, we might call it the House of Commons. Ring a bell? This man had a knack of naming all sorts of things. He also, according to Bill Bryson, the historian, named the American colonies the United States. The United States. Sound familiar? Yeah. Well, that all came from our Tom Paine, who was a philosopher, warrior, lived in Lewes until about mid-1970s. Went off to the colonies and fomented the American Revolution, came back, joined Robespierre in the French Revolution, and when it was suggested to him for doing that he might be hung, drawn, and quartered at home because the liberal element, even the liberal element, had lost patience with him. Did he go back and settle down in America, where he died a lonely and drunk and bitter old man? So much so for people who really pay so much attention to the works of government and governance, and spend their time jaw-jawing instead of doing the work that they should. Well, now, what are we going to do? I have no idea what we're going to do. But what we might do is take a look at what we're going to do. And that is, we'll play a couple of things. But, it is time for us to let me put it this way. This morning is everybody is madder than old hell. But the one good thing that is happening is that our cricketers are coming good. Where did cricket start? Well, John Arlott, who was the famous cricket commentator for many, many years, and whose son Tim I happen to know, and who actually was in the Rights of Man pub a few months ago, having lunch with me, outlines how the game was formulated and tries to explain via the visit of some Australians just what you do and what you don't do. So let's take you with a tipple along with me, part 4, which is all about cricket.
My name is Richardson, and I happen to have been born in Britain. All peoples have their peculiarities and their enthusiasms. We are no exception. One of our enthusiasms is a game whose cause is served by experts and by those who only stand and wait. And while they wait, certain preparations, solemnly proceeding during many hours, reach their climax. For this is Lord's, deeply rooted in tradition and in the ritual tradition brings, where until the proper time, no man may enter unless he have some special access.
Well, on this occasion, I have some special access. My name's Arlott, John Arlott, and later on I'll be telling you something about the match. In the meantime, out comes the old country land measure. 22 yards, 4 rods, poles or perches, 1 chain, the length of a cricket pitch. They're measuring out the wicket, and that is something of a ritual, as a matter of fact. It takes many hours of skillful work over many months to prepare a first-class wicket, and that's just what this is, the special test wicket, a very revered patch of English turf plumb in line with the pavilion door. The test wicket of all test wickets, when at Lord's England plays Australia, and when that happens, everything has to be just so, to start with anyway. And while they've been working, the crowds have been gathering, soon to grow to something like 30,000 people, to say nothing of those who have to stay at home and listen on the radio to people like me.
30,000 people and many millions throughout the world did but time and geography allow. This game called cricket had its origin in quiet places and lives on in equally quiet places, deep in the hearts of those who love it. What is it about this unobtrusive game? What is its magic? For magic it must surely be that makes men sit and watch and dream of past occasions and of wistful yearnings never quite fulfilled. Magic it is that makes the hush when captains meet. The wicket is inspected and another test begins.
Don Bradman wins the toss for Australia, and Australia are going to bat. They're going to get first use of this good wicket. And here's the England side coming into the field. Yardley leading them, and here's Tom Dollery, Jim Laker, Dennis Compton, and Douglas Wright of Kent at the end. And then, out of the pavilion gate, come Australia's opening pair, Barnes and Morris, Morris in the cap. And Alec Bedser of Surrey begins the bowling from the nursery end. Fast medium right arm comes in, bowls to Barnes outside the off stump, and it bounces off Evans' pads. Bedser again. Bowls again to Barnes and again beats him outside the off stump. And the first over's a quiet one, a maiden. and Alec Coxon of Yorkshire bowls the second over from the pavilion end. Elbows well out, comes in, bowls to Morris. Morris forces him away on the onside, and the Australian innings is underway. The first run's up on the board.
And so another historic test is underway, watched by the press of half the world, watched too by appraising eyes in the pavilion, eyes that have seen many a cricketer come and go. For here in the long room at Lord's, criticism is restrained, praise is brief, and only sunny days and history are long. Here are pictures that have captured in eternal attitudes the beginnings of the game, showing the essence of this thing called cricket, all thought and spirit concentrated on a square of green, a subtle battle between a slice of willow and a round of leather. Days of two stump wickets, when bats were curved and the scorer kept the tally with notches on a stick. Paintings of village greens in days when cockfighting was rife. Pictures of the high noon of Victorian peace, when cricket had become part of English education. And Lord's itself in 1837, then and today, the acknowledged home of cricket. Australia's innings has come to a close. The score stands high and is duly noted. There is time to breathe until England takes the field.
Now, cricket in the hands of the experts, more than a game. It's a craft at least, almost a science. Let's ask an expert, Bert Rhodes of Derbyshire, to bowl us a leg break on this demonstration wicket. Now, there's the spinning finger, the third one, see, cuddled close against the seam. It comes up. Now, this is the perfect leg break. Watch where it pitches. Just outside the line of the leg stump, and it turns enough to beat the off stump. And now, the orthodox, the natural break, spun off that index finger, the off break. And this pitches, watch it, outside the line of the off stump, and it beats the leg stump. Now, that's the right arm bowler's orthodox weapon. Let's see how the batsman copes with it. As the ball comes down to him, turning into him, well, all right, he just lets it hit the bat. And that's why short-leg fieldsmen were born. Well, perhaps attack's the best method of defense. Down comes that off-break again, and the batsman hooks it hard and high over those short-leg fieldsmen, but not over deep square leg. There is a way of doing it, of course, over the ball as it moves into you, and push it away along the ground as Edrich does this ball from Lindwall, playing it to Barnes. When England are 27 for 1, which is nothing for Englishmen to be very happy about, and Ray Lindwall is bowling at full speed to Hutton. That ball's well up to him, and he pushes it away past mid-off for a comfortable 2. Bradman moves round those hungry Australian slip fieldsmen, and Lindwall, in one of the finest spells of fast bowling seen in England since Larwood, bowls again, this time to Edrich, and Edrich pushes him away out into the covers, quite safely.
While experts battle, experts forge the weapons that they use. Good white willow with a wholesome heart, long seasoned, like the men who shape it. Skilled hands practicing a long-established craft. For wasn't John Small, the cobbler, making cricket balls at Hambledon 200 years ago? Since then, the craft has grown. And yet, there still remains the steadiness of eye and hand that sews the seams. Seams that in the bowler's hands will give the hidden feel for breaks and twists. Seems to withstand the onslaught of the bat. For the heart of a bat is firm, and its blows have strength and punch.
Yes, it's got punch, all right. Power. And it doesn't get there by accident. Take the handle now, with its cane and rubber springing, to whip as it's got to when a Hutton or a Bradman drives a fast bowler far away. There's got to be good splicing for that kind of thing, too, but cricket and craftsmanship go hand in hand, and when handle meets blade in a cricket bat, you've got a real piece of craftsmanship. It's the same with the ball, sewn firm and tight, and when it's done, a durable, balanced projectile, carefully weighed and measured and graded, as precise in its making as the hands that will use it, as precise as a cricket bat. First-class weapons, one designed to break or swing and beat the bat, and the other to fathom the tricks of the bowler and send the ball far away. And it takes Doug Wright at number 11 with a wild swing over the bowler's head, sky high up there into the long field, to save England from the follow-on. And Ray Lindwall, with 4 wickets already in the match, bowls again from the pavilion end, and bowls Alec Bedser. And England are all out for 215, 135 behind Australia on the first innings. There'll be some long faces in the printing room at this news. There's quite an organisation down there. They keep abreast with the play, recording the fall of each wicket and the scores, so that late arrivals can pick up the score in detail straight away as they come in. With Australia 135 in front, they'll probably think that's a pretty sad threepennyworth. But now Australia have started their second innings. Bedser bowls to Barnes, his in-swinger, and Barnes puts it away, down to long leg. Round comes Hutton, fielding at long leg, and there's that quick low throw to Godfrey Evans. And now Wright bowls to Morris, and he's out.
When a wicket falls or a hit is made, those behind the scenes spring into action. What they record will go speeding over land and ocean. When a batsman strikes, the whole world outside will want to know the score. And when they know it, they'll cast an envious thought to those who sat at Lord's and watched.
And there goes Barnes, magnificently caught by Washbrook at long on for 141. And Australia are now 431 in front. And now here comes Lindsay Hassett, the vice-captain, to face up to Norman Yardley. I suppose waiting for the earlier batsman. He's had his pads on for best part of 4 hours. Well, he needn't keep them on any longer. Meanwhile, the Don bats on. Don Bradman, on his last Test tour and playing his last Test innings at Lord's.
Don Bradman, the pride of Australia and the despair of England. But whichever side one favours, who can but acclaim a master? Bradman, whose name now joins the golden pageant.
And it is a golden pageant. Let's look at just a few of them. Silver Billy Beldam of Hambledon, who in the 1780s became the first great batsman. William Lillywhite, the nonpareil, the man who changed bowling from underarm to round arm. William Clark, the one-eyed Nottingham bricklayer, who with his All England 11 spread the gospel of cricket all through the country. The Lion of Kent, Alfred Minn, the great fast bowler of the 1840s and 50s. Spofforth, the demon bowler from Australia, who in the great Test of 1882 even took the wicket of the old man. W.G. Grace, the Gloucestershire country doctor who turned a rustic sport into the science of modern cricket. The first man to score a century before lunch in a Test, Victor Trumper. Ranji, and the bowler who suspended the laws of timing, Maurice Tate. Clary Grimmett, the most accurate of all leg break bowlers. A problem even for England's great opening pair, Jack Hobbs of Surrey and his imperturbable Yorkshire partner, Herbert Sutcliffe. Jack Hobbs, the modern master, who, in the 1930s, resigned his supremacy to a young man from Bowral, Donald George Bradman. A pageant of 170 years of cricketers on whom the sun always shines. In retrospect, anyway.
But cricket casts its own peculiar glow, and in the years to come, this day too of rain and cloud will be sunlit in the memory. Will rain stop play? Anxious eyes survey the wicket. Willing hands turn too. But fate is kind and the battle is renewed. All through a cloudy afternoon, they struggle on. The English batsman extra careful, heavily conscious of each wicket as it falls.
England want 596 to win, and Hutton's out for 13, and England 42 for 1 wicket. And now Toshak bowls to Edrich. Ian Johnson catches him at first slip. Edrich is out. England 52 for 2 wickets, and in trouble. That'll hurry him and depress him in the printing room. Well, with 2 wickets gone for 52, England are in a lot of trouble. Indeed, almost everything depends on the man who now comes out of the pavilion. Dennis Compton. And with Hutton gone, England's last real hope.
So they fight on, a battle of muscle, sinew, and eye. For this is cricket at its finest, calling forth a quality deep in men, the calmness of a Compton on a sticky wicket when the world is watching, steadiness of nerve and quick agility. To be a Hobbs, a Sutcliffe, a Bradman, or a Compton. The heroes change with the years, but the dream to be a cricketer lives on in every generation. And the heroes pass on their knowledge, for cricket is a part of the very substance of a country's education. But the game knows no class, and indeed no frontier. In the West Indies, Australia, New Zealand, India, under the shadow of Table Mountain, developing the same qualities in men, regardless of background, color, or creed.
England, 106 for 3, want an impossible 490 to win. Impossible? Well, Compton's still there. And here's Big Bill Johnson with that bucking, bridling run coming in to bowl to him. And Compton's out. England's last hope of the impossible. And now, Toshak bowls to Coxon. Toshak thinks he's out. Umpire thinks he's out. Coxon thinks it's a shame. Now it's all over, bar shouting.
The day wears on. Another game is lost and won. Well, perhaps not quite. Defeat has come to England, and to Australia, victory. Australia takes the Ashes. But victory is the least that men play cricket for. They play it for a host of reasons, ill-defined and hard to seek. On school ground, on city street, on village green, they play on. For the urge wells deep from quiet places, in men and in the land they spring from.
Just the one. I managed to get it back off her. I've had a thoroughly enjoyable hour talking about my favorite topic, drink. Join me next week for another trot through the vineyards, smelling the wonderful oats in the brewery and making my own gin at home. Till then, Keith Hayes, toodle pip. Well, there you are. It's a bit of fun with cricket. Cricket is in the ascendancy at the moment with the England team winning the World Championship last week, or earlier this week, I suppose. And a little bit of a background there for those people who don't understand it, and a little bit of memory lane for those people who do. And John Arlott, whose son Tim gives us a slight link from Lewis, a very tenuous link, but nonetheless, it's all through me. But then I whether they accept me or not, I'm a Louisian. I've been here since 1990, which is a reasonable amount of time, I think. Enough to get to know the to know the area. Incidentally, enough also to have done a reasonably definitive set of documentary episodes about this town, which we're going to make available for you to buy at Christmas. It'll only be a nominal fee because you can get it down off the web yourself if you bother to search. But we'll save you the searching, and for a couple of quid, you'll be able to get the bloody past of a tiny town. Acclaimed, I may say. And it was played right throughout the United Kingdom. It hasn't been played abroad. So if those of you who have relatives abroad want to purchase it, we'll be advertising it in the next week or two and tell you how to get hold of it. So there we are. All sorts of things that are going on. Why don't we actually let's disappear down to the park for a moment, just so that my mouth can water out. Just a little bit about Mirador Television. It is totally independent. We have no big business, no political influence whatsoever. So you'll hear on here some opinions and some statements of suggestions of what's happening that are not terribly popular, not terribly heard elsewhere. But it is not a statement of what this television station believes in. We are neutral in every way. But we do believe that it's important to make sure that freedom of speech is maintained. I spent a lot of time in Kosovo trying to untangle the media there that had been forged by subservience to the Serbs and only saying what they were expected to say. And it took me a long time to get them to realize that responsibility was required, along with the ability to say just whatever they felt like. And indeed, they made a lot of mistakes. And I made a lot of mistakes with them. But it was what I believe is for all media is that independence from influence is terribly important. And there are very few places, including here in the United Kingdom anymore, that those influences are not at work. So you will hear odd, strange, weird expressions of beliefs in this station. You will also get some information about our local history and local situations. We review the news every morning to see what is appropriate to our little patch and which is not. But in that, we try to put it in the context that if you are sitting in Alaska, you would still find it interesting. If you were sitting in South Africa, you would still find it interesting. If you are sitting in Patagonia, and there is one person that does, you'll still find it interesting. It is a mix, a polyglot. We put on 3 hours worth of of programming each morning, on each weekday morning. And some of it is okay, and some of it's not. We don't expect you to look for 3 hours, but 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there certainly will not waste your time, we don't think. So that's Mirador Television, Monday to Friday. You can get it on YouTube, you can get it on Facebook, you can get it on LinkedIn, you can get it on Twitter, you can get it on some of it anyway on Instagram. So do take a look. Mirador Television is the name. I'm Keith Hayes. I do most of the analyzing in the morning, but we have a team of people who, particularly Stuart Downey, Stuart Dolby, an XFT journalist who looks at the energy situation, the energy crisis, and makes it understandable for people who are wading through why their bills are going up at such a great, huge rate of knots. So that's Mirador Television in the main. It comes out of the White Hart Hotel, and it replicates. No, it doesn't replicate, but it is in the shadow of a BBC program of the 1970s, 1980s, which came out of the Midlands, called Pebble Mill at 1, in which they had an information and entertainment program from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock. And it came out of the atrium of the building in the BBC building in Edgbaston, which had this great big open space, which is totally unusable, except that the gentleman in charge, the director of programs, a guy called Phil Sidey, who's a far-reaching and far-looking gentleman, is created this program in which when people walked through the atrium, they could wave to the star who was sitting there being chatted to by the hosts. They could jig to the band that was the lunchtime guest orchestra. And we try to do the same thing. We keep an eye open for people who are going through the lobby of the White Hart Hotel, and we say to them, "Oi, what are you doing here?" And if they sound as if they're a bit interesting, but then everybody is interesting. Everybody's got a story. We haul them in, sit them down, and say, "Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you're about. Tell us why you're in this." Because sometimes very interesting stories come out. And one of the favorites amongst the staff here and amongst the hotel personnel is the gentleman who had come to take a look at the way that our courts work, and had come into the hotel, and we'd snaffled him, and he had this huge beard. And it turned out that for a good 3 months of the year, he was a professional Father Christmas, a professional Santa Claus. So you just never do know who you're actually going to find in this hotel, amongst those people who will sit down in front of this screen. So perhaps worth while digging in a bit, and seeing who's who and what's what. Now, I think that it's time for me to tweak a tale or two, isn't it? Yes. I love tweaking this one.
Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps.
Yes. Well, there we are. I just love that little bit of taking the you know what out of the energy companies. They deserve it, some of them, and they are not behaving particularly well now. And if I can carry on from the criticisms that are being hurled around over our governance at the moment. It's that they don't stamp on corporate entities who are badly managed. I mean, I'll give you an example of I won't name the name this morning, but a bank, which we still own a bit of it because it almost went bust from its speculation. But it relies so much on computers that if you are 2 pennies over from your allowed amount of overdraft or whatever, 2 pennies over is they send something back. And they give you an alert, and in the most pompous way, lecture you about how you handle your money. And that is totally unacceptable because it's not so much the people on the ground that are doing it. It's the people at head office who simply do not bother to update their computer systems to meet the standards of the time. A computer cannot be polite. A computer cannot be flexible. A computer cannot deal on an individual basis. So what do we get? We get programs that actually are, in some ways, frightening for older people. And what does the bank do about it? Do they ever offer an explanation? Do they ever offer an apology? No, they do not. What they do is they pile up the profits, and nobody ever says boo about the banks. Oh, we say boo about the energy companies and so on. We never say boo about the banks. It's about time that we did. It's about time that some of these companies were brought to heel. Now, the government get all excited about the internet companies, the online companies, who aren't paying taxes or enough taxes here, and quite rightly so. But also, the very poor standard of corporate governance should also come under the spotlight. And there should be ways of redressing the balance. At the moment, it's down to people like us. And we can get clouted around too. But who knows? Maybe it may be that we will have some way of bringing them to heel. Certainly, we try hard enough, and I'm sure that one day we're going to make sure that we are good enough to do it. Well, there you are. Please come home, says the pussycat. And I hope that some of you will. That you'll find what you see here daft enough, silly enough, quirky enough. We are like Marmite. You either love us or hate us, but by golly, you never forget us. And quirky we are, and quirky we intend to remain. And this is a different type of television. It's an alternative television, if you like. You never quite know what you're going to hear, what you're going to see, what you're going to view from any moment. I think I looked through the inside of the newspapers where we sometimes get lots of stories that nobody else would actually find and that probably you wouldn't read. But I think that just the reaction from their various leader writers is the thing that is about the autumn statement is the thing that we need to take a look at this morning. How Jeremy Hunt's budget affects you? Well, the Office for Budget Responsibility said Britain was in recession with GDP expected to fall by 1.4% next year. Inflation will peak at a 40-year high of 11% before falling to 7.4% next year. Now, as I've discussed with Mighty Max, who sometimes is my co-host, a young man just out of college, has sometimes some fanciful ideas, but nonetheless, as I said, we allow everybody to give their opinions, and it gives us good room for debate. As he would say, is that actually in the supermarkets and in the food stores, and the experts accept this, it is far greater than 11%. 11% comes from the basket of goods which the government choose to look at to measure inflation. But food inflation does seem to have spiraled to even greater amounts of around 15%. I give you a couple of instances that in one of our local supermarkets, something that was costing £1 before inflation grabbed hold, now is selling for £1.45. And that's a big, big jump in price. So inflation is virulent, and as a consequence, we are finding that even though the headline figure of 11% is bad enough, that in food prices and gas prices, it is really far, far greater. And how do we bring that down? I don't know. Thumbs down for the backbench MPs. Conservative MPs yesterday questioned the scale of Jeremy Hunt's tax rises amid fears of a voter backlash. Now, I don't have much time for these backbench MPs. I don't know why some of them are there. Probably just because they are on a career thing, or they want the money or whatever. But we have had through, to some extent, a bit David Cameron, but certainly Theresa May, and then Liz Truss, and in many ways Boris Johnson, the tail wagging the dog. It's these MPs that have forced issues where it's seen the fall of prime ministers at an unprecedented rate. I mean, like Skittles falling. And they are now not at all happy with what Jeremy Hunt has done. And one wonders whether they're going to be as proactive as they have been in the past and cause even more mayhem for this government. Now, I don't bear any grief one way or the other for the government, but I think that we need a period of stability, a period when we've got the same people in charge, at least for a little while, and not for 40 record lows of 40 days. So it's the backbenchers are not very happy. But they did acknowledge the tough economic climate, but lined up to criticize Mr. Hunt for causing further financial pain to working Britons. And their main thing is that those working Britons are going to turn on the party and that they will be out of a job. And I'm sorry to say that the sense of duty that used to be amongst MPs and amongst Parliament has gone. It has disappeared. And as a consequence is the reactions and actions and rebellions amongst Tory MPs at the moment is those of self-preservation and not preservation of their party in Parliament or preservation of the Conservatives in the maelstrom of a new election, which is coming up in not too much over 1 year's time. But they should be looking at our welfare first and their own second. And it's all the other way around. And that's not good enough. Not good enough at all. Here are some of the other things. That the unemployment will rise by 505,000 by autumn 2024. Living standards will take the biggest hit since records began. House prices are predicted to fall 9% by the same date. Now, that's something of great concern to many Louisians who bought at the height of the market, at the top of the market, during lockdown. And at the time, it seemed like a damn good deal. Now, their home is going to lose its value by how much did I say? 9%. House prices are predicted to fall 9%. So basically, if you bought a house for 100,000, it's only worth 90,000 in very short order. Government borrowing will hit 177 billion this year. Interest rates on outstanding mortgages are expected to peak at 5% in 2023 or 2024. Net migration to the UK will rise to 205,000 a year from from the 2006 number onwards. It was manageable. That's a bit convoluted. But one of the things that is getting up everybody's nose, and apart from those people who feel that they're being prejudiced, because they're not, is saying that immigrants are now turning the tables, and that particularly since all governments right across Europe, and for that matter, just to some extent the United States, are falling over backwards to accommodate immigrants, it's going to become an issue. It will become an issue. Whether I like it, you like it, or anybody likes it. It is, all the signs are there that immigration is going to remain one of the key things for the immediate future anyway. The Treasury is set to take in £1 trillion for the first time this year. The UK's tax burden will hit 37.5% of GDP, that's gross domestic product, in 2024-2025, the highest level since 1945. Well, I might as well call out a couple more things while we're at it. Pensions and benefits will rise by 10.1% from April. Income tax thresholds will be frozen until spring 2028. An extra 350,000 top earners will pay the 45p top rate of income tax because the Chancellor has put the exemption rate down from 150,000 to 125,000, hence pulling in all sorts of people. Well, those are some of the things in the inside pages, and it's interesting. It's house prices to plunge £26,500. Average council tax bills set to top 2,000 for the first time. Hunt has thrown away the stamp duty cuts, put that into reverse, which makes buying a house even more expensive, even though the costs are dropping. Dear. It really is going to freeze people into where they live at the moment, whether they like it or not. Sarah Vine is less than kind. I swear we voted in the Tories, she says. So how did we end up with a Labour budget? Well, I don't think that the Tories are responsible for everything that's happening at the moment. But they have been in power for 10 or 12 years. So they have to take some responsibility for it. The good news, triple lock saved, state pension up by £870 to help elderly keep pace with inflation. Truss's plan and benefit cuts are axed. 3,000 energy bills for millions as price cap is hiked next spring. Windfall hit will hurt us, say oil and gas bosses. Well, they've been expecting that. And the energy companies are subject to windfall tax, and probably it's better that they do it because they, in the main, can't leave the country, not like a manufacturer. The lost decade, says the Mail, speaking of the strivers, that is, the people who have tried to better themselves, who tried to work very hard, who tried very hard to make sure that our economy stays buoyant. The salary increases of the past 8 years will be wiped out in the next 2, and the biggest drop in household incomes since records began. But inflation will fall to below 2% by 2024. The £1 trillion tax burden is the highest since World War II. Alex Brummer, the very respected business writer in the Mail, says, this is as far from Liz Truss's tax cut agenda as it's possible to go. Deary, deary, deary me. Reforms to end the care crisis are put back for 2 more years. Tory fury over the return of the disgraced Blair sidekick into government, an advisor to the NHS. There's another Blairite being hired by Hunt to help sort out the educational system. Relief for the high street as business rates are frozen. That's good news for us, I suppose. And new laws to tackle the abuses of tech giants. But it still doesn't make up for the wholesale change. And people are being very unforgiving indeed of this particular tax budget. Dear, 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 dear. Let's take a little break, shall we? Just a little. Yeah, just a little. Just the one. Well, we'll just hang on with that for a moment or two because we don't want to see all of this. So we'll see whether we can actually go back to me while we sort through what we would like to show you. And there's quite a bit of it. So one of the programs that is of great interest is Cancer Research UK, and a chat with one of the local great curmudgeons and great characters, John Henty. So let's go to it.
Lewes is full of interesting characters. I'm not sure being a curmudgeon is interesting, but Leslie has painted one of the self-confessed curmudgeons in Lewes. It's not the old man. It's a another very important character. John Henty is the next person behind Leslie's painting.
Behind me you can see the cancer research shop windows, but they are unusually empty. Any other year you would be seeing Leslie Hills painting right here. She is painting the people of Lewes. They are many recognisable faces. Today we're speaking to one of these people behind the paintings.
How long have you got? Entire programme, I think. Well, Leslie's a super lady and very much a part of this town, which I like to think I am. And I used to see her in the windows, and I noticed all the wonderful portraits there of famous people, obviously. But basically, Leslie was a friend. I used to pop into her shop, the cancer research shop, and we got to know each other. And I think she suggested that perhaps I had a portrait, and I thought, well, not a bad idea. Why not? Bit of fun, and it's raising money for a good cause, cancer research or RNLI. So I said, yeah, fine, okay. I didn't do a sitting or anything like that, and it's wearing that scarf. So yeah, I was very pleased to do that. It's a bit of an ego trip as well, but why not? And all the other side of it, obviously, people with their pets and children and, you know, memories, which are terribly, terribly important. I was born in 1936, which is a long time ago, but it was a very good year because we had 3 kings, the Crystal Palace burnt down in London, and I was born in Croydon, which is South London, in Thornton Heath, which is even more South London. So that was me, born in 1936, only child. Mum had the baby in a nursing home because in those days women did do that sort of thing. And of course it was just before the Second World War. So what I remember of the Second World War is very little, except for one thing, and that is that as a small child, as a baby, I used to be fed banana mashed up with cream and sugar. And obviously the war meant there were no more bananas. And so as far as I was concerned, I wasn't really too bothered about Adolf Hitler and what was going on. I was far too young, but I was very concerned that there were no bananas. And on one occasion, I was in Southbourne in Bournemouth, which is, we were evacuated there, the family. And the greengrocer was serving in the Far East, and he brought home some bananas, and he raffled those bananas. And one of them was won by my girlfriend at the time, who was called Mary. Mary knew that I liked bananas and offered the banana to me. And would you believe it, I actually refused to have it because I had read somewhere that Adolf Hitler was dropping identifiable objects into the streets, which, when you picked them up, exploded. So I thought that she was handing me an exploded bomb as a banana. But finally I did accept it, and then I had to decide whether to mash it or whether to slice it up. And that was a big decision at the age of about 7. I went to a school in Croydon. The careers master on one wet day, similar to today, went round the class and said, what do you want to be, Martin? Well, I'm going into banking, sir. Right, that's good, fine, said Percy Ewins. Dean, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to run a cafe, sir, fine. Henty, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to broadcast. And then the bell rang at the end of the class. And so that was the only career advice I received, nil. So it was a bit frustrating. I did national service. I served in the Royal Air Force, 2728589 is my number. If there is a Third World War, I will probably be serving the Queen with my Olivetti, because I was a typist in the Air Force for 2 years. Came out of the Air Force, went back to my first job, which was Shell Petroleum. I worked for Shell because my father worked for Shell. I got very fed up with it because I was a number. I wanted to be an individual. I've always believed in the individual. I decided that the best thing to do would be to get into journalism. So I applied to a newspaper in Croydon in 1958-9. I was accepted by the Croydon Advertiser and I became a reporter on that newspaper. But after that, only 6 months later, I had a rich uncle in America, or at least I thought he was rich. His name was Uncle Harry, and he was a horse polo trainer for the Santa Barbara Polo Club, which is big time on the west coast of America. So I wrote to Uncle Harry and I said, would he support me if I came over? I wanted to learn about radio in America. Foolishly, he said he would. I wasn't able to work in broadcasting because I wasn't a member of the union. So I used to do English voices. I was quite good at this. Very nice. I'd say, why don't you go down to Chuck's Motorola and TV on State Street? They've got an amazing bargain. John, that's very good. Could you do that again, John? So that went very well, but ultimately I got homesick. I missed my girlfriend at the time, so I decided to come home. And I came home, and would you believe it, I went back to the Croydon Advertiser, and that's quite enough up until 1962. There's more. Well, all right, 1962, the job came up with an airline called British European Airways, BEA. Famous airline at the time, now part of BOAC or British Airways. And so I applied for the job as a feature writer with BEA, got the job, and for 5 years, an amazing 5 years in the 60s, when I accompanied the Beatles to Stockholm, Sean Connery and James Bond to Istanbul, Fall from Russia with Love, Hayley Mills to Crete, an amazing job for 5 years. Why did it end? It ended because the BBC decided to open local radio throughout the UK, and that's how we get into broadcasting. I applied for a job and amazed myself and everybody else by getting the job as sports producer of BBC Radio Brighton, which of course is not too far from the lovely town of Lewes, and we covered Lewes by radio throughout my entire career there. I was 10 years full-time staff at BBC Radio Brighton. In fact, one of the first, my main programme was at 5:30 in the morning. Now you're going to say, who the heck is watching or listening to the radio at 5:30? And the answer is older people perhaps, who can't sleep, may be in pain, feeling alone, fed up with the situation, whatever the situation. And there was the Early Bird Show, which was at 5:30 until 6:30, and it was a very friendly little programme. We had a mascot worm called Whirly, who used to talk to people. Hello, Whirly. Hello. How are you? I'm not very well. You're not very well, Whirly. Why is that? I'm tired. You're tired. I'm sorry about that. Are you going to go to bed? No. Why not? I don't like that. That sort of thing. That went on and on and on, and people had photographs of Whirly the worm. And the other thing we actually adopted a duck to raise money for a wildfowl trust. And so we had a competition to see who could name the duck. And the winning entry was called Mrs. Feather, which is quite a nice name for a duck. Why did the programme end? Because the BBC couldn't afford to pay me £70 a week to get up at £70 a week to get up at 5:30 in the morning. So they decided to axe the programme. There were protests. In point of fact, there were petitions outside the building, letters to Mrs. Thatcher at the time. But of course it had no good whatsoever, and so the programme ended and I vanished off the airwaves. But what I did was I moved wisely to Lewes, I built my own radio studio in a garage, and we produced programmes for hospital radio throughout the United Kingdom for 6 years, and they had star guests like Petula Clark, well, you name it, we had star guests on this programme. And I've still got every single one of those audio cassettes, and equally on an MP3. I like MP3s, tiny little memory stick, put it in, press a button, and I can see any of those programmes or listen to any of those programmes with all the star names. I'm running out of voice. People in the street, the good thing about radio is people don't recognise you. I was recognised once when I was going to Brighton railway station, crossing the road just to get to the station, and there was a guy from St Dunstan's for visually impaired people, blind servicemen. And seeing that he was about to cross the road, I said, are you okay? Can you want help? Any help? And he said, no, I'm fine, John. Now, this was a blind man, but the point is you recognise the voice. That's the nice thing about radio. Now, radio was very personal in those days, and that's why, in a way, people sort of reacted well to it. People say, have you changed, John? And I say, no, I haven't changed at all. But what has changed is radio itself. It's become obviously far more sort of news orientated. It's got to have the weather, it's got to have fitted slots, and also tight programs of music. I could do anything I liked for that 1 hour, basically because the manager at the radio station wasn't listening to the program, so he had absolutely no idea what was going on. On one occasion I actually did the program naked, but the good thing about radio was nobody could tell, you see. It was a very warm day, I have to say. And you might say, well, what about other members of staff? Weren't they affronted? And I said, well, there weren't other members of the staff, because I used to open the radio station, actually front door, go in, pick up the weather and ring up the bus station to find out about the buses and the trains. And I was on my own for at least the first 45 minutes. So radio has changed. There's far more of it now. Commercial radio, of course, I wasn't commercial radio. And I'm a little disappointed with the way that it went. But that's change, isn't it? Everything has to change. When I was working in radio, one or two listeners wanted a record played, and instead of phoning in, which is how things are done, they would write it. Very often you wrote in and said, could I have Engelbert Humperdinck singing, or the Beatles singing? And to get their postcard or letter to my attention, or anybody's attention, they would occasionally put them on postcards. And some of the postcards were Mabel Lucy Atwell postcards. She was famous as a postcard illustrator. And I used to say, for want of something to say, my goodness, you've got another Mabel Lucy card here. They're really nice. She was so charming, wasn't she? Everybody thought that was good. I decided to find out who the hell Mabel Lucy Atwell was. Did she exist? Was she Walt Disney in disguise, you know? So I actually found her family. I travelled across to her family, who lived outside Marlborough in Wiltshire. I met her daughter, Peggy, and Peggy did an interview with me that was on Woman's Hour, which is a programme on the BBC, Radio 4. And it told this story that had never been told before on radio. A remarkable story about this amazing woman, Mabel Lucy Atwell, who is an example to all women. The best example of that, really, is that as a young girl, she was never encouraged to do anything other than look after the boys in the family. It's a very big family in the East End of London. She used to do little sketches, and encouraged by one of her sisters, she sent one or two sketches to Raphael Tuck, who are big postcard producers in London. She signed the letter in around 1899, probably, M.L. Atwell, and they wrote back and said, "Dear Sir, well done, we do like some of these sketches, please send us some more." And it took at least a year before they discovered, and by then it was too late, that they weren't dealing with a man, shock horror, they were dealing with a woman. From that point onwards, she never looked back. I'd written for Viva Lewis, the magazine, for 10 years, little jocular, funny little bits, a bit like the Early Bird Show. And people liked it, and banged into people in the street, which was nice, chatted to them, brief little conversations, all reported in there. And over those 10 years, I met some very interesting people and did some very interesting things. So I thought, well, I might as well sum it all up in those 10 years, do a little book, and then try and raise a bit of money for the Friends of Lewes Victoria Hospital, which is very important to this town. And suddenly there was this little other magazine available, but free. I gave it away, obviously. But if people liked it, then they could donate some money to the Lewes Victoria Hospital, and happily we raised well over £500, and it's still doing very well. I must say that it's still available online, believe it or not. How you find it, I haven't got a clue.
Uh, Good morning, Keith. I think you're muted. Because I can't hear you.
Right, there we go.
Ah, there you are.
So let me do it again. Here from the United States, having said goodbye to John Henty, is Melissa.
Yay.
Good morning, my dear.
That was quite. John is quite a lovely character. I like that. He's
Yeah,
great.
he is. He's a great character. I know him very well, and in fact, he and I, although we haven't got around to it yet, have promised to do for charity a duet of the Whiffenpoof song.
That's great.
And for those people who don't know what the Whiffenpoof song is, it's the Yale University drinking song, which gets a bit naughty towards the end because we go down to the pub and get all very drunk together. But it's a very well-known drinking song in the States, and actually
Yes,
quite well-known
yes.
here as well, I think.
That's
So perhaps what we'll do is we'll do it for this Christmas. I'll collar him. I see him going by in the
Good.
street all the time.
Very good. When I'm in Lewis, I'd love to meet him.
Oh, indeed. In
Yes.
fact, what we should do is we should have you on here with him because I think you would get along very well with John.
I would love that. And I'll tell you, when he was speaking about radio, how he would just walk in and turn on the station. And I did the same thing when I started. I worked at a small radio station in New York, and I would walk in at 4:30 in the morning, and I would turn on the what is it, transmitter, and it was just me. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, so it's quite comical. But yeah, we can talk about radio and where it's gone, where it was, and where it's gone. Yeah, absolutely, that'd be lovely.
It actually does show the difference in attitudes. We were talking about this with young Max the other day, and that people coming out of college now don't want to do anything for free. They think that a piece of paper is going to give them a career, and they demand money. And then when they find themselves serving in the pub, don't quite understand why their career has gone south.
Yeah, I think just to speak on that for just a moment, my apologies for interrupting.
No.
I think because they enter university maybe around age 17. They're not adults yet. So it's the adults that are encouraging them to go into university and giving them this attitude that once you go to university, everything's terrific. And a lot of them end up in serious debt. So in some ways, I blame the parents. I blame adults around them. They don't know what they're doing when they're 17. Who does? So I think I think we all kind of need to take a little blame for that. Anyway.
Yes. And I think that the proliferation of universities too is partly to blame. For every job that there is in media here, there are at least 100 to 200 people who chase it, even the most tiny jobs. And editors really do not care whether you've got a first-class degree or not. What they're looking for is somebody with experience. And it's the old thing. How do you get experience unless you've got a job? And how do you get a job if you haven't got the experience? But
a lot of it is, yeah.
It hasn't quite dawned on the youngsters yet that they're going to have to make some sort of investment into their career if they want to get one of those jobs, because they are scarce as hen's teeth. They really are. We do our best here, but we find it very difficult to get people to sort of come and say, okay, let me be trained. We made the offer to half a dozen people, and none of them will say, oh, yes, and none of them ever turn up. Sad.
Yeah, well, I'll say, in terms of that, my son Connor, I know that he's done some things for Mirador over a period of time, and then he
Indeed.
helped me with some other video projects for free. And now he's working for the top Japanese TV news, NHK, and he's doing very, very well. He just is, he meets the mayor of New York City all the time. He goes to the United Nations. He's just doing, he covered the New York City Marathon. He covered the election. So because of this experience that wasn't paid, he was able to get something that was very, very well paid because he's got experience. So,
Indeed,
I
what
did.
I will do next week is I will dig out one of the programs that Connor did for us, because they're very amusing, and actually he's with the Contessa. Guess who the Contessa is?
Oh yeah, the Contessa.
But
Lucky
a
me.
very good example, and a very good result to demonstrate that if you are willing to invest a little bit of time and effort without compensation, is the result that can come from it.
Right. I mean, internships, I understand that some of them are paid, certainly at the corporate level, but at the level where you're not working for a corporation, I think it's important. I know I worked for very, very little money in radio, but I worked my way up. I did some crazy things and I had so much fun. Hey, listen, this job,
Absolutely.
let's be honest, it's supposed to be fun. No?
Absolutely.
Right?
Well,
And
we've had, I've known you since 1990, and boy, have we had some ups and downs and loads of fun, one way or
yes,
another, trying
absolutely.
to create something new, and here we are still creating something
Yes.
new.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Not a bad
So,
advertisement. Now, since you mentioned Connor, is we'd like to serialize his career. What's he been doing this last week or two with NHK?
let's see, what has he been doing? He's going to, tomorrow he's going to an anime convention. And it was funny because before he started working, he really wanted to go to this convention, but it was very expensive and he couldn't get in. And now he lands this job, no problem. And now they're treating him like royalty because he's with NHK. So yeah. And he just got his United Nations press pass so he can go in there and do stories. And he's met the mayor. He's just doing so wonderfully. And he's going to find out soon about the Navy. So exciting! It's just very exciting. I'm just sitting back and watching, enjoying it.
Yes, and I think Melissa, while you are a very well-known broadcaster, in fact, an award-winning broadcaster, you're not from an elite family, as it were. You earned your spurs yourself, and your son didn't get any special treatment. He's done it himself too by application.
Yes. Well, I'll speak to that about wealth. I'm not. My father was an orphan, had a very rough life, fought in World War II, horrible. He was nightmares every night until he was 92 and passed. And he started out very poor, but he, through gumption, through hard work, he became very wealthy. He did lose a lot of his money because of poor investment choices, but so I'll say that I was a very lucky young lady. So, but at the same time, I understood this value of hard work, starting at the bottom. I got it. I worked at the teeniest little radio stations. Then I worked my way into a little TV station, and I worked my way into the newspapers, and then eventually Associated Press, and then eventually public television. So I understand that from my father. I wasn't just born into major wealth,
Yeah, right.
So I was born into a family where hard work was really important.
And indeed,
So
your son is more the same, isn't he? Because you did
yeah.
start out on the lowest rungs. I mean,
Well,
let's face it, you really became a star, a terrific star, a coast-to-coast program. I'm glad to say I was your top banana. In other words, you were able to poke fun at me while you were doing this. But Connor has not had any special treatment at all.
no, no. I mean, he watched me, working hard, saving, investing, that it wasn't just given. I did work hard and I did struggle, and he saw that, and he understands how to build wealth because I taught him that this is how you do it. This is how you go from poor to middle class to wealthy. There's a way to do it. Um, and so, but he said, no, I'm going to start small. I want to serve my country in the military. And I don't know. It's also, honestly, Keith, it's an attitude. When you think that life is good and that you're going to succeed no matter what, and that, you know, you have a lot to offer in return, things fall into place. So this is his attitude. Even if there's some adversity in front of him, it's going to work out.
Yeah.
There's a reason for the adversity. Maybe it's sending me a message, something I need to learn from. And these are messages I instilled in him because I've had my struggles over the years. And I've had my pity parties, certainly. But then I would pick myself up and say, no, life is good. Life is good. So anyway, I think that's really also very important.
I mean, I'm interested to that you would talk about that because one of the things that I complain bitterly about is that the modern generation has lost what I call the sense of duty, which people had. It is now all me, instead of a balance between that and their country and the society and so on. And that's all lost. And it's such a pity. One of the great ladies that is a great friend of my wife Val's, and she lasted until 98, and her husband lasted to 104, 105. But she was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. I mean, I can't describe to you the wealth that she had, but she came upon hard times, but she never lost that sense of duty. And one of the stories that I love telling about her is her father was the architect who built the London City Council, the big building across from the House of Commons. And it was bought by the Japanese eventually, and she heard about this, and there was a plaque to her father in it. She told nobody. She grabbed her cane, her walking stick, and her handbag, got on the train, and this was in her 80s, and went up to London and knocked on the door of English Heritage and said, get down there and make sure that plaque isn't interfered with. And down they went to make sure that the plaque honouring her father for his part in building that building was done. She was a remarkable lady, but the commitment she made to her, I mean, she more or less ran a vicarage for her church, where the vicar was a bachelor. She was involved in all sorts of organizations in Lewes, and all in all, a sense of duty. And I just wish we could see some of that back again.
That would be nice. Yes, I agree. Hopefully, this me generation will turn into an us generation. I think what happens oftentimes in youth is you focus on yourself and grandizing, yourself. And hopefully it becomes a bit shallow and unfulfilling. And then you start to look elsewhere and say, well, I do like helping people. I do like that feeling. And so maybe that, a lot of times that's what happens in youth. I know for myself, I thought I was, all that in a bag of chips because I was on television. And then after a while, it lost its luster. And I felt when I retired from journalism and I went into teaching, and I was teaching disabled children, poor children, I loved that. I just felt like it was so nice to give back. And in fact, that's what I'm planning to do in retirement when I officially retire from this other job that I'm in. So yeah, but I
Uh,
think a lot of that's youth.
Yeah, in fact, you were responsible for a program which, once again, I must replay because there is a lady in Lewis that strangely does the PR for a society or an organization in New York State who looks after mentally challenged youngsters, well, and in fact, adults as well. And they you got me on there as an interviewee, as it were. They played the part of being the journalist, and I played the part of being the interviewee, and
Right, that was fun.
it was quite an occasion. I mean, I felt really good about it. To explain that, if you will, for a minute or two, just what that organization is about.
Right. And another thing that I also wanted to point out, it's interesting because I decided I wanted to do that in fact, I'm getting my master's degree in disability studies and helping people with disabilities. And that same lady you're speaking of sent me an invitation to that same forum with that same group. And the guest speaker was one of the top American disabilities activists. I was so excited. Her name was Judy Heumann. And by the way, I'll take a look. I have her book here. Judy. She was the first wheelchair-bound teacher in New York City. She fought for that. She also fought for the Americans with Disabilities Act. Yay, Judy. Fantastic. She was inflicted with polio as a young girl and ended up most of her life in a wheelchair, but she didn't let that stop her. She's phenomenal. And she gave the folks in that group home so much hope, which was so wonderful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mind you, I found some of them sort of quite articulate and very piercing with their questions.
Yes.
I mean, I hate to put it this way, but there were no fools amongst them.
No, they are, yeah, very highly intelligent, have so much to offer the world. That's really what we have to stop dismissing people, because I would say all of us, good and bad, have something to offer, whether it's a lesson, whether it's help, whether it's, inspiration, and we can't overlook that. Even I even remember when I was working at the TV station, and there was this cleaning lady. We became such good friends. She helped me take care of my son. I mean, she was amazing. So everyone, you can't dismiss people, because you miss an opportunity to either learn from maybe their mistakes, maybe they're not being so nice, and maybe they've got some wisdom you don't know about. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Well, you've just triggered a memory, because when I was in Northern Ireland, which I was for quite a long time during the Troubles, I was asked to help MenCap, the mentally handicapped organization, and they had been awarded the Belfast Marathon as a fundraiser. And I put on my little thinking cap, and Eunice Kennedy was at that time the leading light in MenCap. And I said, okay, what we'll do is let's get one of the children or one of the runners, to run for Eunice Kennedy. And then we took it further, and we went to the Queen Mother and said, could somebody run for you? And yes, she said, and the Prime Minister. And in the end, they all had a T-shirt saying who they were running for. And we had this whole stringing of people, famous people, running in the Belfast Marathon. And for MenCap, it was the best. It was the best fundraiser that they had. Yes, it's never underestimate the power of people who supposedly have got mental handicaps.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of people with disabilities, physical, mental, they don't want to be pitied. They just want to be, hi, I have a lot to offer. Okay.
Absolutely.
There you go. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
Let's see what you have to offer. That's fantastic. They just want a chance.
they're terrific to mix with too, because that's sort of fun, and they're interested in you, and they're very challenging with some of the questions. Some of the
Right.
questions that ordinary people wouldn't dare ask you.
Right. And I think it's also important to, when you're seeing someone, to get past the labels, get past the visual, and get kind of into who am I speaking with? What human am I speaking to? Am I speaking to somebody who's got a problem with their leg? No, I'm speaking to this human being.
Yeah.
Right? Can we get past all this other stuff? Right? So.
Yeah, indeed. Now we have to get to the serious stuff for a little while, because we talked last week about President Trump, or former President Trump, and you were quite scathing in your attitude about him. And your guess was that he was yesterday's man and he wouldn't run for president, but he's thrown his hat into the ring.
No, I think really what it was he'll do it, but he'll lose because he's an idiot. So
right.
He'll lose to DeSantis, no problem. No problem. DeSantis will, what we call, clean his clock. Okay, no, seriously. So he's only doing it because, the people around him, I think what I said, the people around him didn't want him to do it. Because he's going to make a fool out of himself.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go. It's all entertainment, Keith. You have to understand. It's not, you're looking at him from the frame of mind of a serious politician. He's just doing it for the attention. He's a child. That's all it is. We have to all understand that, put that in the correct frame. Mm-hmm. He's just a baby. He is. He has tantrums all the time. It's almost like, I remember back when he first came on the scene, as trying to run for president. And he would say such outlandish, crazy things like, of course I don't pay taxes. I think that's smart. And the people who support him say, yeah, see, he's honest. Yeah, but he's honest about being a liar. Hello. He's honest about being a sex addict. He's honest about being a cheater. But you like him because he's honest? Help me out here, folks.
But generally speaking, what has been the reaction of the public, publicly in the newspapers and so on, to him throwing his hat into the ring?
Even the Republican and conservatives think he's a joke. They do. They think he's ruining the party. He is. He is. But in some ways, and I'm going to look at it from another point of view. In some ways, see, there are some, when you get to extreme viewpoints on either side, Democrat, Republican, liberal, socialist, whatever, it can get dangerous and restrictive. And so in some ways, DeSantis might be looks very good. He plays a really good game. He's very well-spoken, thought of as very intelligent, can do more damage than Trump, because people don't take Trump seriously. They take DeSantis seriously, and they may enact some things that may be very restrictive in our society here in America. We're used to lots of freedoms. And so, they'll see Trump's a joke, But DeSantis might be a little bit more troublesome, honestly, because he presents well. Oh, we'll take him more seriously. Oh, we like him better than Trump. I don't know. Maybe we ought to keep the clown.
Well, let's flip the coin. Joe Biden is getting on in years. Is he likely to run again?
Well, I mean, Trump's getting on in years too. They both need to go. But, like I said, it would be nice if we had a more moderate candidate, right? Yeah. Not extreme. DeSantis, to me, is extreme. Mm-hmm. I like moderation. Biden is extreme. I like down the middle. I like somebody to take a look at an issue and say, well, if we do this, this might happen, and that might happen, and that might happen.
Yeah.
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 Right? So
let me also ask you this, because we see these things from afar, and we're never quite sure whether we understand. Is that Biden was talking to Xi about being a moderate in terms of the Ukraine war, and then, of course, the rockets fell on Poland, which is a NATO country. Did that have any impact on you in America?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think it did, but I think we're so far from it that maybe it doesn't have as much of an impact as it does for you.
Yeah.
But I really think what it was the head of NATO. We know it was a Russian missile. We know. However, the idea was we don't want to start World War III over the death of two farmers. That's essentially the decision they made. We may think maybe that's not the right decision, but are we all willing to go through like the conditions that we went under in a World War II?
Yeah.
We want to go we want to deal with that for World War III. It would be far more destructive now. Yeah, could we destroy Russia? Sure. Do we want to destroy ourselves in the process too?
Yes,
it's difficult. It's the difficult decisions. They are. But you know what? I was reading a story today. Putin is nowhere to be found. So he's kind of disappeared because of all the mistakes that are being made. So
yes, you're quite right. His head hasn't been up over the parapet. Right. But one of the things about the KGB, and he's ex-KGB, of course, is that they know when to appear and when not to. And I'm not so sure that his devious little mind isn't still at work, burrowing away in the corridors of the Kremlin.
It'll come home to him. Don't worry about it. It just may look like he's got an advantage, but eventually, done.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking so much of advantage as how long will it last? How long will it keep on? Because there's been another attack on Ukraine from Russian missiles just yesterday, last night. Yes.
Yeah, I really can't say, but it will end. I don't think it's going to end. It's not going to end well it's not going to end well for Russia. It's just not. No, you want to get us, and then North Korea. Come on already. Do we even need why are we even talking to you? Why are we even talking to you? You little significant idiots. Why?
Yeah.
Why
is it always the fear of a rogue satellite, though? You know, they're popping them into the Japanese Sea, and one might just hit Tokyo by mistake.
Yeah, that's the concern. So, in some ways, and I hate to always say this because I think Trump's an idiot, I think that him being an idiot with Kim Jong-un, and it was almost being distracting to him, and recognizing him kind of kept him at bay, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't see a lot of that during the Trump administration. So, maybe acting like an idiot is not such a bad thing sometimes. Not that I think that he would have been, I think he was good with Kim Jong-un, but not so much with Putin, because I think he just would have handed Ukraine over to Putin. He wouldn't have supported Ukraine. He would have said, sure, take parts of it. I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I think he did keep Kim Jong-un at bay. I do.
Okay, let's get off the serious stuff then, because one of the great virtues of having you on is for people here to appreciate the American way of life. I always quote Churchill, two great nations separated by a common language, and indeed separated really by a common culture. We have so many likenesses, but again, we have so many differences, and people do like to know what's going on in the States. So have you been eating out? And if not, what have you been eating in? What is the food level? And what sort of entertainment have you been getting on? And are you getting ready for Christmas yet?
I am. Because, as you know, I'm coming to your side of the pond on December 1st. So I really only have 2 weeks here. I'm a little frantic because I I have to Christmas shop for my friends here. I can't just leave and forget about them, right? So I, I, I don't even have a proper suitcase. I'm like, oh my God. So, like, I'm just, I'm working and I'm going for my master's degree at the same time. And I got to write a final paper and I got to do my homework. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do to myself? It's exciting. I just have to be very disciplined and try to get everything done. So what did I eat this week? I didn't really eat out this week. My son sometimes will go to a little Italian restaurant down the road and maybe get pizza. We're trying to be healthy. Me, most of the time I'm so lazy because I'm not gonna say I'm lazy. I'm over inundated that I just eat at home. I like whatever I've got. What am I? All right, I'll eat a grapefruit. I don't know. What else do I have? I don't know, a salad. I made really good Colombian rice and beans. What else did I eat? I don't know, egg white omelet with vegetables. I'm a veggie person. And then my son bought a really great cookie. It was a chocolate peanut butter cookie from this local gas station down the road, of all places. And they have food there, and it's like a little mini mart. And oh my God, it was so good. So I don't know. What do you eat there?
Well,
I do know the answer to that since I've been there. But what did you eat this week?
Well, actually, I was a bit traditional this week. I had a cottage pie. I had an Irish stew, and last night, because I was working rather late and I was tired when I got in, I had a sweet and sour chicken. So I haven't been eating a sort of a roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, but I might just do that this weekend.
Very good, very good. Yeah, you're a very traditional eater because
I'm very traditional.
when I was in London, really there's so many different cuisines and there's vegan. I was really surprised at how much vegetarian there was there, given the meat-based diet that of tradition. And so I was really shocked. They even had a vegan festival in Guildford. I'm like, okay, I'll go with it.
Well, we no more than 50 yards from where I'm sitting at the moment. We've just had a young Korean man open up a Korean vegan restaurant. So Lewes has its own Korean vegan restaurant, and it's very popular.
Oh, I'm going there. Okay, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know.
He's a lovely young man, and I've popped in and I've said, now look, because he says really he's not going to be full blown until the new year. But I said, the moment you are, you come on Mirador and tell people exactly what you're about and what to expect and so on. And he's just lovely. And whenever I see him, he says, I'm coming on, I'm coming on. So I was stuck up a nice friendship with him.
I have to say, I love Korean food. We have a Korean grocery store that's very popular here. And the food is just so delicious. And like they have all the vegetables, all the soups and it's delicious. And then of course they have barbecue, which I would imagine they're probably going to do like a kind of a vegan barbecue, which I'm sure is going to be fantastic.
I'm sure.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Yay.
Well, all sorts of exciting things happen, even in little towns. although I still would say that New York is the place for food in its great variety. Yes, London is too, but I really, the one thing I miss is the traditional surf and turf, the filet mignon with the lobster tail. That to me is America.
I don't even know what American is. It's so there's so much variety. Maybe that's what American is. Variety.
Well, I think we from time to time we go through soul searching as what is the true Brit, and it doesn't exist anymore. We've got such a variety of people with cultures and foods and so on, that it's settling down into almost a new race, I suppose.
That's not nice.
That's true of many parts of the world.
We do have in New York City, very close to where I work, well, very close to Grand Central Station, we have a British pub called the Shakespearean, and Connor and I will pop in from time to time. And I'll have a Fuller's. He'll have something on cask. Is that what that's called? Cask. I don't know these things. And he had a Scottish egg the other day.
Oh, Scotch egg, yes.
Yeah, Scotch egg. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't know these things. I just had a little, honestly, I just had like a little jar of roasted peanuts and nuts. And
well, I hope you're going to get Harvey's in there.
Connor made a very, very good Pilsner. It's in our keg. But what I'm finding is that his job is distracting him from his beer making.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
That's a downside to journalism.
Although, like part of me is a little sad, but part of me is a little happy because then I don't have to clean up the kitchen from all the beer making. But I do enjoy watching him get excited about it and watching the process and the two of us working together, filling the bottles or whatever we're doing. He didn't quite like the cider he made, so I don't know what he's gonna do. Maybe when I'm gone, I don't know what's gonna happen to my kitchen.
He's a man of many parts.
Yes.
Incidentally, perhaps you can see that the sun has come out suddenly and is streaming through the window of the White Hart Hotel and bathing me. And although it doesn't make the picture great, it's wonderful to sit in the sun and have it flow in through the window.
Well, there's no sun here because it's 5:42. But
yes, I know. You're quite remarkable in getting up on a Friday. Each Friday you struggle up, but you are so valuable and popular with what you have to offer, and you really do keep us well informed about the happenings in the United States, and I mean. We do, like any country that is well away, is we look at the popular stories and say, oh gosh, Trump is going to run for president. What on earth is that all about? And you're able to debunk some of it and point out that it's just a bit of nonsense that he can't help, his ego tells him to do it. So I've relaxed again.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Like if I had to decide between DeSantis and Trump, I might have, if I had to vote, like, and someone put a gun to my head and I had to decide between one of the two, I might take Trump. To be honest with you.
Why is that?
He's less dangerous. Because he's not taken as seriously.
Right. Yes. You see DeSantis as still as an extreme Republican.
I do. I really do. Very arrogant. All right, he's Italian. That I like about him. He's Italian. I'm Italian. Okay. But that might just be where it ends.
Well, Melissa, are you going to do the SantaCon again this year?
I think it's going to be when I'm in UK, so I'm not going to be able to.
Can
sadly.
we get Connor to do it?
Well, it's possible he might do it for NHK and maybe get some video on his phone.
Well, get him to do it for us as well, because one of the lovely things is you on board the Metro bantering with the young men who are on their way in terms of how much alcohol they've had, and with their Santa's hats on.
That was fun.
It's good television.
That was a lot of fun. I was just concerned that one of them was going to vomit. So, but it was, from drinking too much. But yeah, it was so entertaining and fun. I really had a great time. I did. So with my friend Doreen too.
Yes, that's right. She's
She
very
was
funny.
this. She was just this unwitting, participant in this TV thing. I mean, she was a teacher, and because she was my friend, I had gotten her involved, and her partner, who sadly passed away, was a wonderful man. Used to call her Cecil B. DeMille, and so her nickname is Cecil. So, every time I call her Cecil, she cries a little because her partner died of COVID. So yeah, it was very sad. He was such a Freddie was fantastic, and the two of them together were adorable. But yeah, so yeah, SantaCon was fun.
Well, we'll let you get ready for work now.
Thank you.
And we've got a couple of weeks yet before you leave for here. So we'll see you next Friday.
Okay.
And have another good chat about various things. And
Okay.
lovely to see you as usual.
Good to see you too, Keith.
And say hello to Connor. And perhaps before the end of the month, he'll have got into the cockpit of one of those super duper jets and has flown at faster than the speed of sound.
To be trained to do that, that will be fun. That'll be wonderful. Anyway, wonderful to see you, Keith. Say hi to Max and to Stuart, and if you see Stephen, I've emailed him. I haven't heard back, but I'll keep bothering him. So.
All right. Okay.
Anyway, talk to you later. Bye, everybody.
And the reference to Stephen there was Stephen Catlin, our mayor last year, whom Melissa got to know quite well, and they correspond. Stephen, of course, is not at all well, for those people who may wonder about where our mayor has disappeared to off our screens, and it's got a fairly serious operation to face. I live very close to him, so I do know that he's okay in the sense that the worst hasn't happened. But Stephen Catlin, our former mayor, and a jolly good chap. Now, I'm just going to end the little interview with John Henty, which we interrupted to go to Melissa. So here is the last bit of John's interview with the other Melissa White. And we actually
I had absolutely no idea what was going on. On one occasion, I actually did the program naked, but the good thing about radio was nobody could tell. You see, it was a very warm day, I have to say. And you might say, well, what about other members of staff? Weren't they affronted? And I said, well, there weren't other members of the staff, because I used to open the radio station, actually front door, go in, pick up the weather, and ring up the bus station to find out about the buses and the trains. And I was on my own for at least the first 45 minutes. So radio has changed. There's far more of it now. Commercial radio, of course, I wasn't commercial radio. And I'm a little disappointed with the way that it went. But that's changed, isn't it? Everything has to change. When I was working in radio, one or two listeners wanted a record played, and instead of phoning in, which is how things are done, they would write in. Very often you wrote in and said, could I have Engelbert Humperdinck singing, or the Beatles singing? And to get their postcard or letter to my attention, or anybody's attention, they would occasionally put them on postcards. And some of the postcards were Mabel Lucy Atwell postcards. She was famous as a postcard illustrator. And I used to say, for want of something to say, my goodness, I've got another Mabel Lucy card here. They're really nice. She was so charming, wasn't she? Everybody thought that was good. I decided to find out who the hell Mabel Lucy Atwell was. Did she exist? Was she Walt Disney in disguise, you know? So I actually found her family. I travelled across to her family, who lived outside Marlborough in Wiltshire. I met her daughter, Peggy, and Peggy did an interview with me that was on Woman's Hour, which is a programme on the BBC, Radio 4. And it told this story that had never been told before on radio. A remarkable story about this amazing woman, Mabel Lucy Atwell, who is an example to all women. The best example of that, really, is that as a young girl, she was never encouraged to do anything other than look after the boys in the family. It's a very big family in the East End of London. She used to do little sketches, and encouraged by one of her sisters, she sent 1 or 2 sketches to Raphael Tuck, who are big postcard producers in London. She signed the letter in around 1899 probably, M.L. Atwell, and they wrote back and said, "Dear Sir, well done, we do like some of these sketches, please send us some more." And it took at least a year before they discovered, and by then it was too late, that they weren't dealing with a man, shock horror, they were dealing with a woman. From that point onwards, she never looked back. I'd written for Viva Lewis, the magazine, for 10 years, little jocular, funny little bits, a bit like the Early Bird Show. And people liked it and banged into people in the street, which was nice. Chatted to them, brief little conversations, all reported in there. And over those 10 years, I met some very interesting people and did some very interesting things. So I thought, well, I might as well sum it all up in those 10 years, do a little book, and then try and raise a bit of money for the Friends of Lewes Victoria Hospital, which is very important to this town. And suddenly there was this little other magazine available, but free. I gave it away, obviously. But if people liked it, then they could donate some money to the Lewes Victoria Hospital, and happily we raised well over £500, and it's still doing very well. I must say that it's still available online, believe it or not. How you find it, I haven't got a clue. I'm not very high tech. I'm not digital. There used to be a really nice car boot sale in Lewes on a Sunday. And occasionally I would see Raymond Briggs down there and have the occasional chat. And I thought potential here. He produced a book about all the pieces he writes for a magazine called the Oldie Magazine, which is for old people like me. So I thought, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write to him and say, could I sort of abridge some of these articles and maybe turn them into a play, a radio play. And as I said, it's a long story, but basically he approved. He said, as long as I'm not involved, he said, you can do it. And again, we raised money for charity, and we put on 2 shows, and we were planning to put on another show in Lewes, but unfortunately the circumstances have changed and we can't do that. And it was a very, very funny little radio play all about this quite remarkable man, Raymond Briggs. So Raymond Briggs, Mabel Lucy Atwell, Max Miller. And going back to the point I made much earlier, they were all individuals. You know, my message to anybody is, you know, anybody can be ordinary. Try and be extraordinary. You know, it helps. Cut.
Travelling around.
Well, I hate to cut Annie off in her prime there, a very talented young broadcaster, and she was with us now, but there we are. His talent moves on, and we will try to develop more talent as we go along. It is now 10:53. We've just had Melissa Conte from New York on, giving us some background into journalism, and also how worried should we be about President Trump? Not very, she says, and is most unkind with some of the language he uses to describe him. And that was John Henty, a well-known character in Lewes, and to be seen striding the streets. And also, if you can pick up many of the magazines, there's a flourish in Lewes, and you'll see John's articles and stories in them. So it's always good to see him, and he's older than I am, so to see him as bouncy and as articulate and as with it as he is terrific. What have we talked about today? Well, we went through the papers, the front pages, of course, which are all about yesterday's budget, and there's generally speaking, the middle classes are not at all happy with it, and there is plenty of criticism coming Jeremy Hunt's way. How will he handle it? I don't know. And I think to some extent it will all depend upon whether the backbenchers who get very vociferous and have, when they don't like what the Prime Minister does or the Cabinet Minister does, start to be activists, whether they'll get cracking or not and do something about it, I don't know. I hope not. Not because I have any axe to grind for Jeremy Hunt or Rishi Sunak, for that matter. But I think that we just need, up until the next election, a period of calm, a period when we haven't got a change of leader every 5 minutes. And that's what has been happening. So controversial, though this budget is, which actually does, it's quite true, it looks after the elderly and the lame. It looks after those people who are incapable of looking after themselves on benefits. And it dips into the pockets of the middle classes and of business. So as one commentator said, is this really a Tory budget? But perhaps extraordinary times demand extraordinary measures. And the unfortunate thing is for this country, we are in extraordinary times. Some of it is our own doing. And when I say our own doing, I mean us, not just the government, us. We have lived on credit for a long time. And now the chickens have come home to roost. And somebody's got to pay it back. And who's going to pay it back? Well, it's us. It's us'uns who actually did the free-for-all spending, who got used to the fact that if we wanted a car, we just picked up the phone and got credit for the car. If we wanted a pair of trainers at £300, we just picked up the phone and used a credit card or used credit offered along with the sale. We, in lockdown, lost our discipline in terms of work ethic, and now is finding it difficult to get back, and we're paying the price. What will the reaction be? Ultimately, I hope not one of it isn't fair. It shouldn't happen to us. No, it shouldn't happen to us. But we actually invited it ourselves. We must have known that the state of affairs could not go on, not with the amount of effort that we were putting in to put back into society what we were taking out. And that's my beef at the moment. We've lost the sense of duty. We've lost a real sense of duty. If we can get that back, then a lot of the evils that are besetting us would suddenly start to ease off and eventually disappear. Simplistic? Yeah, perhaps. But then keep it simple. A lot of things in life that are successful are simple, not complicated, not complex, but fairly straightforward. It's 10:59. It's 10:59. I'm now going to say toodlepip, and I hope that you will join us on Monday when we come back full throttle to go through next week. And I suppose that everybody else is looking at Christmas. We're trying to hold off until December the 1st. Will we do it? Not sure. We certainly will try before we actually come full force and really try to make this as good a Christmas as we can under the very difficult circumstances that we're living under at this particular time. Okay. I'll say goodbye. Toodle, 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 pip. Cheerio.